Hey there, welcome back to our Sky Tonight program. This is Seth Mayo, curator of astronomy for the Loman Planetarium at MOAS, and I'll be your guide for this episode as we cover the dates of December 12th through December 18th. We're going to start things off by talking about Mars, and I'll show you that picture I took of Mars and the Moon in that close conjunction as seen from Florida. And we'll talk about Mars even more as we watch it rise higher in the east, and I'll mention some of the objects you can see around it. And we'll end with a look at the peak of the annual Geminid meteor shower we can look forward to. So let's get to it. I want to bring back up something that happened last week that was really amazing. I think it's worth mentioning again. And that was when the Moon and Mars got really close, either for a tight conjunction, or if you were in the right location, you had a chance to see the Moon cover up Mars in an occultation. This was spectacular because we had a full moon, or a full cold moon, and we had Mars at opposition when Mars was closest to Earth, and at its biggest and brightest. So it was really neat to see these two solar system objects appear close from Earth's perspective. Here in Florida, we just had a close conjunction, and that was still cool enough. And here's a picture I took from one of our museum telescopes. We have the Moon in view here, which is awesome to see the Moon up close like this anytime, no matter what's going on. We have the Moon, you can see the Tycho crater, which is just a fabulous crater with these kind of ray patterns sort of shooting out. You can even see the roughness of the Moon here on the right with kind of the craters and the mountains and sort of the bumpy terrain on the surface. I love seeing that. And there at the bottom right, we have the little planet Mars there. At this moment, the Moon was about 245,000 miles from the Earth, and Mars was about 51 million miles. So early December, Mars was at its closest approach to us, and it makes it kind of big and bright, making for a nice view, especially through a telescope. And Mars reaches opposition about every 26 months, so you do have to wait more than 2 years to see it get close to us in its orbit. But to have this happen at the same time was really spectacular, and to see that kind of close approach here is great. We also captured video of this as well through our telescope, and this is kind of the same view here. You can see actually clouds rolling over the Moon there at the top because we were actually having some overcast skies coming in. But luckily I had a chance to see this before it got totally overcast in our sky. But I will say it's always amazing to see a view like this, and it's some of my favorite imagery to capture because it really makes you feel connected to our solar system and the universe we live in. But heading into this week, now we have Mars kind of alone in the sky, but it's still very bright since we're still quite close to the planet. It makes for a great naked eye object, and again, one that's great right now through a telescope. And Mars, since it's still near opposition, can be seen about all night long, from about sunset to sunrise. So we have a lot of time now to see this planet, and it joins two other planets that we can find in the sky still, the planets Jupiter and Saturn. So we have some nice planets to see all across the sky right now. Zooming back into Mars here, Mars is situated inside a great wintertime constellation. Nearby are the stars of the Hyades star cluster, which forms the nose of Taurus the Bull. And above that is the very famous Pleiades star cluster, the most famous open cluster as seen from Earth. So I'll draw Taurus the Bull here in the sky, and as we see Taurus, we know that winter is coming here. And if we do wait a little bit later in the evening and watch these objects rise higher and higher in the east, we'll find another great constellation for the wintertime rising. Local time around maybe 8 or 8:30, right about there. And there we have Orion the Hunter. There's Orion's belt there, the 3 stars in a row, and the red shoulder star of Betelgeuse. Of course, we'll be talking about more of these objects and constellations later on, but I just want to mention them as you appreciate Mars in this area. We can find some great wintertime objects it's rising with at this time. Now, if you're a meteor shower lover, then you know that usually the second half of the year is when some of the best meteor showers occur. And here in December, especially in the middle of December, you can always expect a show from one of the best meteor showers all year, and really kind of caps off the year with something great. And that is something called the Geminid meteor shower. And we've talked about this meteor shower quite a bit on this program before, but it's great to mention every year. And this meteor shower radiates from a point inside the Gemini twins, another wintertime constellation you can see rising kind of along with Orion that we just mentioned. Here are the Gemini twins. They're consisting of Castor and Pollux. I clicked on the star Pollux, kind of the brighter of the two, but Castor right over here, this twin, is kind of near the radiant point. Let me show you that now so you can see the radiant point near that star. And so if you do find a stray Geminid or two, you can trace them back to about this point inside the Gemini constellation, the Gemini twins from Greek mythology. Now for this year, this is best seen on the evening of December 13th and partly on the morning of December 14th. That is actually the peak time frame for the Geminids this year. And most meteor showers are best to view in the early morning, but for this meteor shower, you're going to have to compete with the moon eventually. So after sunset, when it gets dark, you can start looking out for these if you have a clear sky to look upon. Darker locations is better, but one thing that will rise later on in the evening is a fairly large waning gibbous moon. And that will rise about 10:20, maybe 10:30 local time, and there it is. And of course, a moon that's a bit large can add a little bit extra light pollution. So that may make it a little more difficult to see the meteors once the moon rises, but it doesn't mean it will erase all of them in the sky. You might still see some even after the moon rises because the Geminids are typically a pretty nice meteor shower. This meteor shower can have up to 120 meters per hour, at least on a very dark night with no moon. But even with the moon, it will diminish that number a bit, but you could still see a decent amount of them from this particular shower. Now, I also like to talk about the Geminids because it comes from a really interesting object. As you may know, most meteor showers derive from a comet, right? A comet is an icy, rocky object that heats up when it gets close to the sun and leaves behind a debris trail that we fly through every year, which gives us a particular meteor shower. And one of the reasons I really like talking about the Geminids is because the source of this meteor shower comes from a really interesting object called 3200 Phaeton. And long ago, when it was kind of first discovered, especially in the early 80s by a spacecraft, it was actually the first object of its kind discovered by a spacecraft, we thought it was more like a comet because it has an elongated orbit. It actually has material streaming from it when it gets close to the sun. It actually gets very close to the sun, within 13 million miles of it. And one of the reasons why it's called Phaeton, which is the son of the Greek god of the sun, known as Helios. So Phaeton was an appropriate name for this object. And then it was realized that it's more like an asteroid. So eventually it became sort of a hybrid term, a kind of comet-asteroid hybrid, or what was eventually called a rock comet. It's very unusual to have an asteroid that has a stream of particles leaving its surface as it's close to the sun. So it's really been an oddity in the solar system, but we do get the material from this asteroid every year around December, providing the Geminids. More recently, back in 2021, there's been some research that has possibly shown that the reason why 3200 Phaeton exhibits comet-like evaporation when it goes close to the sun is because it may have sodium locked inside the object, and as it reaches the sun, that sodium kind of fizzles away, and it may contribute to actually pushing rock away and giving us the Geminids. So it's really interesting to know that those Geminid meteors may be the product of sodium being evaporated from inside an asteroid and pushing it out. So eventually those little objects shoot through our sky at tremendous speed, we call meteors. So we're still learning more about this. We're still understanding the makeup of this object. We do have radar images of it, especially from Arecibo, the now retired radio telescope from Puerto Rico, and it makes it look kind of ominous, this sort of rocky object kind of floating in the darkness of space. Another weird thing about 3200 Phaeton is it's blue. Most asteroids are typically very dull, gray, or even a reddish color, but this is one of the few that are blue, and it's a very blue asteroid as well. So that's an interesting characteristic that astronomers are still trying to understand. So we have this blue asteroid that behaves kind of like a comet. Sodium possibly is pushing its rock into space, and we fall through that every year to create possibly a beautiful meteor shower display in the middle of December. So hopefully we'll see something nice. Maybe get out there on Tuesday evening or even Wednesday morning. Even if the moon is out, that's okay. But Tuesday evening before the moon rises might be your best chance to see this annual meteor shower that can provide a decent show. Well, that's it for another edition of our Sky Tonight program. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you're in the area, especially in Daytona Beach, please stop by the Museum of Arts and Sciences and check out a show in our Loman Planetarium. We're running them daily. If you want any more information, we always say check our website or check out our various social media channels where we're posting some great content from around the museum. So thanks for joining us again. We hope to see you back here again soon. Take care, and of course, happy stargazing.